Welcome to Testing in the Pub. Welcome to another Testing in the Pub session.
Hello.
No people to interview today, so
Yeah, you've just got to listen to us instead. Yeah, sorry, I'm sure you were expecting. We've run out of interesting people. No, we haven't run out of interesting people to interview. The world of testing there's a lot of interesting people in it. So we haven't run out of people.
But we do have a cracking topic today, which is all about hiring and recruitment. So let's start from the big question: why? Why would you hire testers in today's agile environment? Why would you hire testers?
It's a very good point. I mean, it's kind of thinking about, well, do you need a tester? I mean, people are going to be from a hiring point of view. You either hire to fill a gap in your team, so you hire because somebody's left, or you hire because it's a new requirement. And so, say, for example, you're a startup. Probably the biggest decision from a testing perspective that startups have is, when do I hire my first tester? Or even, do I hire my first tester? Because for the first couple of years, you don't necessarily, startups don't necessarily tend to have a tester. Whether they need a tester or not is a very different thing, and it's a far wider thing than just hiring. It's much more about kind of the requirement for testing, and it all falls down to this kind of testing and activity thing as well.
Yeah, that's just what I was thinking there. Like, I think everyone recognises there's a need for testing, but it's the who does it question. But I think testing as an activity it's a bit of a strange one as well, because in my opinion it's not just one activity. So just even that sentence can form misconceptions about, it's an activity, so one person can test, that person could be anyone. But regarding why you would hire a tester, I would look at it more as the full T-shaped, right now, rather than saying T-shaped tester, I say T-shaped team, where you've got your specialisms within the team to build up the development team as a whole. So I would say you would need the role of a tester, whether you call it a tester or whether you call it another developer but just in the testing capacity, or whether you call it a test ninja, as I think Rosie Sherry likes to. Yeah, but for me, I would say that you would need that role, whatever you call it, in the team.
You need that skill set.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the key thing. And at some point in the life of your company, assuming you're a startup, you come to the conclusion that actually, for the overall efficiency of the team from a delivery perspective, somebody needs that skill set. You can't just rely on the small number of developers that you most likely have first in order to be able to essentially give you something which is delivering value to your customers, which is obviously the key thing from a startup perspective, is quickly delivering value, thus enabling you to either get more revenue or secure more funding.
Yeah, definitely. Context is definitely key with this, like anything else as well. Because if you're at the point where your product's growing, right? If you're a startup initially and it's at the idea basis, it might be one or two people that form this idea and make it into a reality. But as you get more customers and more demand, your product grows with the extra ideas that you bring in. So your team has to grow, and you focus on what matters regarding quality has to grow with that as well. So,
absolutely.
And that's where the specialisms come in at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've never worked in startups. I've always worked in established businesses. Where I've hired testers has always been more around either needing to flex the amount of testers based upon the amount of work, i.e. suddenly there is more work, there is more developers, there is more testers required as well, or it's been to replace people who've moved on to other stuff.
And it's interesting because I've kind of had the opposite, where although it's not strictly startups, it's maybe tenure at that tenure point. So it's kind of like I've been in a couple of companies now that first tester,
Yep.
And it's interesting to see the mindsets and how a lot of the role in being a first tester is trying to coach what quality is, what testing is. So it's changing the mindsets and seeing that change as you're more involved. And I think at that point, that's where there's a heck of a lot of startups in London alone that I don't think they actually realise the benefits of having a tester in the team, because it's not just testing a product, it's requirements analysis, it's testing ideas, challenging processes and tools, things like that. So
I like to see it as kind of customer advocacy as well.
Totally.
That's a really nice way in my head that I kind of like to sum that up. I can't remember where I read that. It's not something that I've come up with myself, so I won't lay claim to that one. But I kind of like it. But so it's kind of interesting from your perspective, because at some point somebody in those organisations must have thought, okay, we need a tester now. They must have sat down and defined their requirements.
Yeah.
And that's kind of really, from a hiring and recruitment perspective, that's a really, really key point, is being really, really sure what you want. What are the key kind of minimum requirements you want of somebody you're going to call a tester in the organisation?
This is really a good, interesting question, because perspective comes into play here as well. Now, me and you, if we're looking to hire someone, we've got that testing knowledge, so we know that we'd look for someone that's thinking about context, someone that's got certain experiences that we know to look for. But when I was that initial tester, the job specs were very, I want to say traditional, but I don't like that word.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean,
It's
and I think
kinda-
it's
it's kind of like they were asking for ICEB, but in the interview, I challenged why they looked for ICEB, and it's pretty much, the agency that we went through, they asked for ICEB, so that's why we asked for it.
it's kind of lazy recruiting. It's lazy agencies ultimately, isn't it?
It's also because of the lack of knowledge about testing as well. So they've never experienced that in their organisation before. They might, I don't know, they might have had experience of that before, but not with the recruitment side of things. And it might have been a long time ago where people were trying to promote ICEB and things like that, and ISTQB. But yeah, so that's part of what I found. That was part of my role being in that. As that first tester, when they're looking to expand the team, that's when I would then take on that recruitment as well. It's kind of like you have to, I had to rewrite the job specs, I had to throw in some testing challenges, things like that.
Yeah.
So, but they would never. I think they showed me a piece of paper with a screenshot of one of their systems saying, "How would you test this?" And I was like, well, you've got no idea about testing, so what are you expecting? It's like, for me, that's a bit of paper. So how would I test the paper, or do you want me to start listing what I see on the screenshot? The printed out screenshot.
I think that's maybe the key thing. I mean, in situations where you may be a hiring manager and you know very roughly what you want, but you don't know exactly. That's a good situation where if you find a good recruitment agent that you can build a relationship with, and not a kind of lazy one who, as an example, would just be talking about certification, because obviously certification is a tick box. Have they got certification? Yes, no. Okay, I can very easily sift these CVs. So that's where building up a rapport with an agent or a set of agents, maybe you might have a preferred supplier list in your company of agencies you can use that have been kind of pre-vetted. That's where that can be really powerful, because if you start trying to go for a more direct model, whereby you're going to be very clear about what your requirements are, your company may have a website, a careers site or something, and you're going to try and attract people directly. If you're going to do that, you need to be really, really sure about what you want.
Yeah.
And to be really sure about what you want, you either need the experience, or you need to be able to consult with somebody who has the experience.
So thinking about that, then there's a lot of trust with the agency, right?
Well, I guess there is, but they're not. Let's not forget, recruitment agencies aren't benevolent organisations. They're They make a percentage out of the salary of anyone they put into your organisation. So it's in their interest to do it well,
Yeah.
but some do it significantly better than others, and
Yeah.
maybe ask. It's a matter of again even just seeking that kind of that advice from people who've used different agencies before.
Yeah.
It's kind of that word of mouth thing.
Because what I was thinking is that if there's a situation where it's harder to find the good testers, well, if the company doesn't know any better, and the agency's looking for a quick win to get someone into that position, then that's when the trust comes in.
Yes. Yeah.
Because obviously every company's going to say, I want a good tester.
Yep.
So it's really what is good
Yep.
in their opinion, in their perspective.
Yeah, I think the key thing ultimately comes down to knowledge, and it comes down to experience. And if you're recruiting for testers and you don't feel you have that knowledge or that experience, go and find people who do have that knowledge and experience, and basically ask them and get you. It's not difficult to go on Meetup and find a few meetups, like London Tester Gathering, for example.
Yeah.
Just thinking of a kind of London bias here, because we are a bit London biased. Let's be honest, because we're in London. We're in London, so yeah.
But that's
Get along to a meetup ultimately, and talk to people and ask people, because meetups are a great place to kind of recruit testers from, or meet a lot. There's a big pool of testers that come together, and also the sort of testers that go to meetups are the sort of testers who view testing as a career, and they have a real kind of interest and a passion for it, rather than it's just a 9 to 5, come into the office, do some testing, go home again sort of thing.
It's a great point, because even the fact that you're going to a meetup means that you want to learn more about your industry. So that's actually another avenue for recruitment. So we were talking about agencies and things like that, but actually hiring from meetups without using agencies or anything like that.
Yeah,
Just
word of mouth, ultimately.
Yeah.
I think that's absolutely right, because it shows a kind of greater interest being at a meetup. And certainly when I'm looking for testers and looking at kind of CVs and stuff like that, anything that demonstrates that as a tester you've got a real interest and a passion in what you do, that puts you kind of ahead of other people. And certainly questions I would ask in an interview, I always ask questions around what blogs you read, what meetups you go to, basically how do you keep yourself better informed. So where do you get your inspiration from? And I think it's really key, because it's not just meetups, because let's be honest, meetups take time. Meetups are in the evenings. People sometimes have commitments which mean they can't go to meetups, but if somebody can demonstrate to me that
Could be a testing book.
It could be a book, it could be a blog, it could be a set of blogs people follow. I like to ask people which blogs they follow, because I mean, blog consumption, it's something that frankly anybody can do. Nobody is so busy they can't read a blog post a week or something. That's
guaranteed that everyone uses the internet in their own spare time anyway.
Well, exactly. And so I like to ask them about what blogs you read, and then if they're really kind of showing that interest, the other thing I like to ask them which blogs they've read that they disagree with, because it's very easy to kind of prep up for, I'll just go and read this random testing. I'll basically Google testing blog, read the first thing that comes up once, and then I've got that answer for my interview. It's, I always like to see, an interview should be a discussion ultimately, and
it's quite a difficult question though.
I know.
How would you answer that?
How would I answer it?
If I was interviewing you right now and I was like, okay Steve, what blog, not actually what blog, but what blog post do you disagree with?
What blog post did I last disagree with?
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough.
It's tough. It's okay.
I don't know
It's
how
okay not to give a snap answer in an interview.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's interesting because it is stuff like that where I guess the best interview that I'd be looking for is a conversation. It's a conversation based. Where, kind of like how we're chatting right now. You know, where we're talking about testing. We're talking about our opinions.
Yeah.
And I would hire someone like that, like straight away, because it means that they are they're interested in what they're doing as their career.
And I think that's the
Yeah.
key thing. It's career, because ultimately we work in technology. Technology changes rapidly. So the knowledge of how to say, I don't know, program in Java or Python or Scala or Swift or whatever,
Yeah.
the knowledge to basically do stuff like that and the knowledge to test systems, that's something that you have to be continually learning to be successful anyway.
Yeah.
What you need to demonstrate, yes, you may need to probably demonstrate some technical ability in an interview, but if you can demonstrate the ability to learn and the ability to be inspired by learning, then in my head I'm looking at you and I'm thinking, right, okay, well, okay, they may not tick every box, but that doesn't matter because I can train them. You're never gonna know everything about a company and the systems of a company until you're in the company. Not even close.
So here's the next big question then. If you are interviewing someone that is extremely keen and they see it as a career and not a 9 to 5 job, they read blogs, they go to meetups, but they are very traditional in their way of testing, in the sense of they're keen to go on all the eyesight courses, they want to do scripted testing rather than exploratory testing. Would that affect you hiring them? Because you know that they're really keen in the community, they're getting involved with blogs and reading blogs and self-learning, but that's just the path that they.
Do you think such a
is best.
person actually exists though? Because if you were involved so much,
I'd say it depends on what communities you're involved in,
true.
because
I'd also be looking for team fit. Ultimately, You've got to look for team. Ultimately, the ability to learn and the ability to fit in with a team, to me, is at least as important as what your technical skill set is. And therefore, I would look at somebody who maybe preferred a traditional approach. If I was hiring them into a team using, say, something like Scrum or maybe Kanban or something like that, their way of working would not fit. And if
team fit, you're not talking about personality-wise, what you're talking about.
I'm talking about both. I'm talking about personality, but I'm also talking about their approach to would their approach to their work fit the team's approach to their work.
Right,
And somebody with what we might call a more traditional approach to testing, i.e. they work rigidly from requirements documentation, they write test cases, they test those test cases, that wouldn't fit with the way the team works. I'd also argue that's not an effective way to work anyway.
Yeah.
And therefore, ultimately, they may be hooked into into some communities, but I would also then argue those communities aren't actually promoting a message that would fit with the organisation anyway. So ultimately, the person would not fit.
Right. Certainly here. Right, so let's talk about CVs then.
Yeah. Please don't send me a CV with your picture on it, because that's really bad.
But the person that I sent it to actually liked the fact that I had done something different.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't think it was they actually liked my picture because it was a bit of a dodgy one. But it was just because it stood out because it had something different on it.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think it would be a bit cheesy.
Yeah.
Now.
I've
taken it off now.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like to see pictures on CVs. I don't like to see logos and stuff like that. Like some people still seem to think it's great to put things like the ISTQB logo on there or something like that.
Oh yeah. No.
Or I don't not bothered about any of that. What I like to see on a CV, CV is basically, it's the way you grab a hiring manager's attention for maybe anything from 20 seconds to about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That gets you the first stage of the interview process. So ultimately, what I want to see in a CV is I want to learn a little bit about the candidate, and I want to know what difference the candidate is going to make to my team in something which is quantifiable. So just listing everything you've done isn't particularly interesting. Listing all the programming languages or all the tools you've used isn't particularly interesting. But if you can say something like, we had this problem, I changed this, and the outcome was this, in quantifiable terms, or I I work with the team, and the team work on a product, and the product is used by X number of customers, and therefore my testing approach is this,
Yeah.
then that kind of grabs my attention because that's something real.
That's quite interesting, because I've always thought that when you're writing a CV, when I've been writing my CV, for example, I've always focused on knowledge and experience. So it's always, but you're talking about a different type of experience. I'm talking about experience with different responsibilities and processes and techniques and tools, things like that, and knowledge about that as well. So
I think there's a place for that, but
Yeah.
it's not right at the beginning of your CV.
Oh, no,
it's
no.
right at the end.
yeah, at the beginning I've always thought sort of like high level summary, but just an idea that I've just had there. Would you ever structure a CV like a test report?
Depends how you would structure a test report.
Well, personally, I use mind maps, and I would never dream of using mind maps for my CV. Although it might actually be.
If I received a CV
Interesting.
that was a mind map, I would look at it quite seriously. However, unfortunately, I don't think a CV that was a mind map would ever land on my desk or in my inbox, because it would be. I've always worked in organisations where there's kind of one level of tech recruitment before the hiring manager.
Right.
And unfortunately, I think
They would filter
I think
that out.
I think mind maps would be a little bit too wacky for that level. I would love to work in a company where basically people thought it was great and that someone had sent a mind map in as a CV, because I'd look seriously at that, because you can also you can kind of understand or try and understand people's thought processes a little bit with mind maps. Maybe we should do
It
that.
would
How
be
do we?
interesting.
Yeah.
But again, that comes down to how you recruit as well, because if you're
Yeah.
recruiting through the community, it's very possible that you could get that type of CV.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you're recruiting through an agency, like we were discussing earlier,
You'll never get that.
You'll never
Yeah.
get that.
No, you're right. You're right. So yeah, I mean, from a CV point of view, yes, I obviously need to know where you've worked and when, and what you did there, and what technical skills you have. But I think the starting point of a CV, and maybe even most of the front page of a CV, it should be basically highlighting, not specific to any particular role, but kind of just acting as a summary with some real quantifiable facts, essentially, about what you've done and the difference it made. And if you can do that,
That's interesting.
and if you can, what you've learned is also kind of very, very key. If you speak at, say, conferences, or you blog or whatever, drop all that stuff in as well, because that's all really, really relevant. It's really frustrating sometimes. I've interviewed a few testers where you'll go all the way through the interview and they'll be kind of selling themselves on this, that, and the other, and then you'll ask them about blogs and stuff, and they'll say, "Oh yeah, I've got a blog. I write about testing a bit." And then after the interview, you go away, you check it out, and it's got loads of great stuff on it. And you think, why weren't you telling me that before?
It's interesting, because whenever you do see it, it tends to be at the end of the CV as well.
Yeah.
And other interests.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, I've got a blog, I read books. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And you're
kind
kind of
of-
thinking, hang on a minute. That's a very important thing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, that shows you're interested in what you do outside of your work hours, and those are precisely the sorts of people that are good at their job, because it's something they enjoy doing. And if you enjoy doing something, you're always going to be better at it.
Yeah.
And therefore, from a company perspective, you're going to be better in the team. You're going to be more motivated. You're going to be more passionate. That motivation will probably rub off on other people, make you a good team member.
So thanks for listening to part 1 of this podcast on hiring and recruitment, and look out for part 2 being posted very soon.